For years, I thought I had it all figured out. A loving marriage, a beautiful baby, a home filled with laughter and memories. But sometimes, even the strongest foundations crack. Sometimes, the people you trust most end up hurting you in ways you never imagined. It all started when I noticed the little things. The way he would glance at his phone, a flicker of nervousness in his eyes when I walked into the room. The sudden late nights at work, the vague excuses about meetings and deadlines. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I was just tired, or stressed. But the feeling wouldn't go away. A knot tightened inside me every time he smiled a little too brightly after a text or slipped out of the house without saying where he was going. And then there was the babysitter. She was young, friendly, and had a way with my baby that made me feel at ease. I trusted her, too much, as it turned out. One afternoon, I came home early from work. I wanted to surprise everyone, to see my little one's face light up when she saw me. But when I opened the front door, something felt off. The house was too quiet. My heart pounded. I walked through the living room and heard voices, his voice and hers. At first, it sounded like laughter, but then the words grew softer, more intimate. I froze, barely breathing. I crept down the hall and peered around the corner. There they were, him and the babysitter, close, too close. She was leaning into him, and he was holding her hand. My chest tightened so hard I thought I might pass out. In that moment, everything shattered. I stormed into the room, tears blurring my vision. They jumped apart like kids caught with their hands in the cookie jar. I screamed, demanding to know how long this had been going on. He stammered, trying to explain, but no words could fix the wound in my heart. From that day on, everything changed. The house that once felt like a safe haven turned cold and unfamiliar. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I watched my son, wondering if he sensed the tension, the brokenness in the air. I filed for divorce. I fired the babysitter. I tried to shield my son from the storm, but some things you can't protect them from. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the silence afterward. The endless, aching quiet where love used to live. After the storm had passed, the shouting, the tears, the frantic phone calls, I found myself standing alone in that cold, silent house. The room seemed to echo with memories, but those memories were no longer mine. They belonged to someone else, to a version of my life that had been ripped away without warning. For weeks, I drifted through my days like a ghost. I couldn't focus at work, I barely spoke to anyone, and the nights were the hardest. When I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind would spin with questions I had no answers to. Why did he do it? How could he betray me like that, right under my nose? And most painful of all, did he ever really love me? I tried to remember the good times, the moments when he held me close, when he smiled at me like I was the only woman in the world. But those memories felt like distant echoes, drowned out by the reality of what had happened. My son, though, he was the only thing keeping me grounded. Every morning when he smiled up at me, it was like a small spark of light in the darkness. I knew I had to be strong for him, no matter how broken I felt inside. But strength wasn't easy. Some days, it felt like the weight of everything was too much to bear. I would cry in the bathroom when I thought no one was watching. I would scream into my pillow to drown out the ache in my chest. And yet, somehow, I kept going. One afternoon, a few weeks after everything fell apart, I received a call that surprised me. It was from him, my son's father. "I want to talk," he said, his voice low and uncertain. I was hesitant. Part of me wanted to slam the door in his face and never look back. But another part, maybe the part that still hoped for healing, wanted to listen. We agreed to meet at the house, just the three of us. No pressure, no expectations. When he arrived, I could see the weariness in his eyes. He looked different, tired, humbled, but also determined. We stood in the doorway for a moment, neither of us sure what to say. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't scared. Maybe that was the first real step toward healing, just allowing ourselves to try, even when we weren't sure where the road would take us. The evening air was cool as I waited in the living room, my heart pounding in a way I hadn't felt in months, not from fear or anger, but from a cautious hope. When he finally walked through the door, it felt like the first time we'd truly met again in a long while. He didn't say much at first. We just stood there, awkward and unsure, like two strangers trying to find a familiar path through a dense forest. But after a moment, he finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness right now. But I want to try, if you'll let me. I wanted to scream, to shout, to tell him all the pain he'd caused. But instead, I found myself nodding. Maybe because I was tired of the fight. Maybe because somewhere deep inside, I still believed in us, what we had been, and what we could be again. That night, we talked. Not about the past, not about the betrayal or the hurt. We talked about our son, about his school, his friends, the little things that made him smile or frown. We talked about the future, not as a distant, impossible dream, but as a fragile possibility. It wasn't a grand gesture. There were no sweeping apologies or tearful confessions. Just a simple conversation, a chance to reconnect, to remember that beneath the pain, we were still family. In the days that followed, something shifted. He began to call more often, not just to ask about the bills or the house, but to check in on me and our son. Sometimes, we even talked for hours about nothing in particular, just trying to rebuild the bridge that had been burned. I won't pretend it was easy. There were moments when the wounds reopened, when anger and resentment bubbled to the surface. But we kept coming back, again and again, because we both knew that the alternative was losing everything. One afternoon, a few weeks later, he surprised me by inviting me to dinner, just the two of us. No one else, no distractions, no expectations. When I arrived, the house smelled like the warm comfort of a home-cooked meal, and for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back. We sat across from each other at the table, the silence filled with the gentle clinking of cutlery and the occasional laugh. He told me about his job, the struggles he'd been facing, and the small victories that kept him going. I shared my own stories, the challenges of raising our son alone, the loneliness that had crept in. By the time dinner was over, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't perfect, and it never would be, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had my son's father back. Not the man I once thought I knew, but someone new, someone willing to try. That night, as I lay in bed, I realized something important. Healing wasn't about forgetting the past or pretending the pain never existed. It was about choosing to move forward anyway, choosing to build something new, even from the ashes of what had been destroyed. And in that moment, I decided I was ready to take the next step. We stood there in the doorway, just the two of us, neither quite sure what would happen next. But for the first time in what felt like forever, I wasn't scared. Maybe that was the first real step toward healing, just allowing ourselves to try, even when the road ahead was uncertain. A few weeks later, he invited me to dinner. Just the two of us. No big show, no grand apologies, no pressure. It was simply a chance to be mother and son again, to talk and listen without the weight of the past hanging over us. When I arrived, the house was warm and smelled faintly of his favorite home-cooked meal. Sitting across from him, I noticed the changes in both of us, lines on his face, quiet moments of hesitation, but also a softness I hadn't seen in a long time. The conversation started slowly. He told me about his job, the challenges he was facing, and the small things that kept him going each day. I shared my own struggles, raising our son alone, the nights spent worrying about what the future held. As we talked, I realized something important. We had both changed. We were different people now, shaped by pain and distance, but still connected by something deeper. Maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build from. The dinner ended with a feeling I hadn't expected, a quiet peace. It wasn't perfect, and it wasn't an instant fix. But it was real. And for the first time in years, I felt like my son's father was back. Over the next few months, we took small, careful steps toward rebuilding. There were more conversations, more moments of vulnerability. Sometimes old wounds resurfaced, and the air thickened with tension. But each time, we chose to keep trying. We began to find a new rhythm, not the one we'd lost, but one that fit the people we had become. He started calling more often. Sometimes just to talk about the little things, work, friends, our son's school projects. Other times, he asked for advice, which surprised me. It wasn't always easy for either of us, but I saw that this was how healing worked. It wasn't about wiping the slate clean overnight. It was about living in the mess, forgiving ourselves and each other for the mistakes we'd made. Then one day, a few months after that dinner, he showed up at my door holding a small box. I was in the kitchen, preparing dinner when I heard his voice calling from the living room. "Mom, do you have a minute?" I wiped my hands on a towel and went to see him standing there, looking nervous but hopeful. The box in his hands felt heavier than its size suggested. "What's this?" I asked, surprised. I hadn't expected any gifts, not from him, not after everything we'd been through. He held the box out, his voice steady but sincere. "I just wanted to give you something. Something to show you I'm serious about trying. About us." When I opened it, inside lay a delicate silver necklace with a heart-shaped pendant. Simple, but beautiful, a quiet promise wrapped in metal. "I saw this and thought of you," he said. "About everything we've been through, about how you've always had my heart, even when I didn't deserve it. I don't know if this makes up for everything, but I want you to know I'm not giving up on us." Tears filled my eyes as I stared at the necklace. It wasn't the gift that mattered, really. It was what it symbolized: hope, effort, a future we could still reach for. I could barely find my voice, but I nodded and hugged him tightly. "Thank you. I don't know if I'll ever fully forgive everything, but I'm proud of you. Proud of us." From that moment on, things kept getting better. There were still hard days, moments when old fears crept back. But the foundation was there. Slowly, carefully, we rebuilt not just a relationship, but a family. And for me, something shifted. The house, the legacy left behind by my late husband and me, no longer felt like a burden. It felt like home again. I started to live differently. Mornings were for quiet walks on the beach, afternoons for reading and cooking. I reconnected with old friends and even picked up new hobbies. Most importantly, I began letting go of the anger that had weighed me down for so long. One evening, sitting on the porch and watching the sunset over the ocean, I felt it, the peace I had been searching for. This was my life now. Mine to live and shape. I wasn't defined by my past, by the mistakes or the pain inflicted by others. I was defined by what I chose to do moving forward. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the waves crashed softly in the distance, I smiled. It was over, the battle, the hurt, the fear, behind me. And finally, I could breathe. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. After that evening on the porch, life didn't suddenly become perfect. Healing never does. There were still moments when old feelings bubbled up unexpectedly, a flash of anger, a pang of sadness, or a sudden fear of losing what little progress we'd made. But those moments no longer ruled me. I learned to face them, breathe through them, and let them pass like waves rolling in and out. My son and I began spending more time together, just the two of us. We'd cook meals, take weekend trips to the nearby lake, or simply sit on the couch watching old movies, laughing at the silly parts. It wasn't the easy relationship we once had, but it was real, and that was enough. His visits grew longer, and he started coming over without calling first, which was a big step for both of us. One afternoon, I found him in the garden, kneeling by the flower beds, planting bright tulips. "Thought we could use some color," he said with a shy smile. That simple gesture made my heart swell. It wasn't about the flowers, it was about the effort, the willingness to nurture something new. Our relationship was like that garden, something that needed care, patience, and time to grow. I also noticed changes in myself. For so long, I had carried the weight of anger and disappointment like a heavy coat I refused to take off. But now, I was starting to shed that coat piece by piece. I was learning to forgive, not just him, but myself too. Forgiving myself for the moments I lost hope. For the times I let bitterness creep in. For the way I shut people out when I felt too vulnerable. I realized forgiveness wasn't about forgetting what had happened or pretending it never hurt. It was about releasing the hold the past had on me, so I could move forward with an open heart. One day, we sat down together, just the two of us, and talked about the future. "I know we can't go back," he said, eyes searching mine. "But maybe we can build something new. Something better." I nodded. "I want that. It won't be easy, but I'm willing to try." We started making plans, not just for visits, but for holidays, school events, birthdays. I wanted our son to have both of us in his life, to feel the love and support he deserved. At times, the past tried to pull us back, like old shadows lurking around the edges. But we faced those shadows head-on, together. And with each step, we grew stronger. Friends noticed the change in me too. They told me I seemed lighter, happier, more at peace. I smiled and told them it was true, that after years of pain, I had finally found a way to breathe again. Sometimes, when I caught my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked calmer, more confident, and ready to face whatever came next. The necklace he gave me still hung around my neck every day, a reminder of where we'd been and the hope we held for what was to come. There was no fairy tale ending, no magic fix that erased the past. But there was something more valuable, a new beginning, born from honesty, courage, and the simple choice to try again. As the seasons changed, so did we. Our family, once broken and battered, was healing, piece by piece. And through it all, I learned the most important lesson of all. Life isn't about perfection. It's about resilience. About love that endures, even when it's hard. About the courage to forgive and the strength to move forward, step by step, day by day. Months turned into a year, and slowly but surely, life began to feel whole again. Not because everything was perfect, because it never would be, but because I finally understood what peace really meant. Peace wasn't about forgetting the pain or pretending the past never happened. It was about accepting the scars, the mistakes, and the hard lessons, and choosing to live despite them. My son and I weren't just rebuilding a relationship. We were creating a new one based on honesty, respect, and a deeper understanding of each other. We laughed more, shared more, and most importantly, listened more. The house, once a place heavy with memories of loss and anger, became a sanctuary. I filled it with light, music, and warmth. I painted the walls in soft colors, planted a small garden in the backyard, and made space for new memories to grow. I also started thinking about my own happiness again, what I wanted, who I was beyond being a mother and a widow. I reconnected with old friends, joined a local book club, and even took a pottery class. It felt strange at first, but slowly, I found joy in things that had nothing to do with my past struggles. One afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table working on a small clay vase, my son walked in, smiling. "Mom," he said, "thank you for never giving up on me." I looked up, tears in my eyes. Thank you for never giving up on me. It wasn't just about us. It was about hope, the hope that even broken things could heal, that even the deepest wounds could teach us to be stronger and kinder. I knew the road ahead would still have its challenges, but now I was ready. Ready to face whatever came next with an open heart and a steady spirit. Because finally, after so much pain, I had found peace. And that peace was my true beginning. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you've ever faced something difficult, whether it's with family, friends, or yourself, remember that healing is possible. It takes time, patience, and courage, but you are never alone. If this story touched you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. I'd love to hear your stories too. Feel free to share in the comments below. Your voice matters. Take care, and remember, every ending is just a new beginning.